Last episode, I cut the boat in pieces to get ready for some major modifications. This episode, there's a lot of prep to do because we're starting the extension to the back of this boat.
You're watching Rebuild Projects.
And welcome back. So last week we got the boat flipped over, and this week we're trying to grind down all the old bottom paint. I need to see what we're working with. I'm starting with the 7-inch grinder here in the back. Really, I just need to get the hull to a point where I can start fiberglassing. But we're going to spend special attention to the back of the transom area. I need to cut off the strakes. I need to get everything down to the fiberglass layer. And then we're going to have a good bonding surface. I go between my oscillating and my reciprocating saw with a big blade to cut those strakes back. I'm trying to go about a foot back, which will give me a flat surface to bond to. Now I find when you're really trying to sand aggressively, you can't go wrong with a 5-inch orbital and a Big Daddy 7-inch grinder. Now it's really nice to have an assortment of grinders and sanders, different sizes. 7, 6, and 5 inches. They all really help when you're trying to sand, surfaces that have different size constraints. And I'm using them all on this project. I have every sander you could ever imagine. I use them all for specific things. I use the big 7-inch grinder for really getting down when I need to get right down to the fiberglass, pass through all the layers of whatever's on top. But when I just want to get a good surface prep for just say either repainting or a flow coat, I love using this little 5-inch Bosch-Rooney. It's a variable speed grinder, so a little bit more than a regular grinder, but it's well worth it. But this one comes with this collar, which allows you to buy this shroud. It's separate, but the old Amazoner has it on sale usually. It's amazing. It's really great. Now you need the good vacuum, the good ventilation, and then there's one key element that makes it all work. So when you have this grinder, it's really cool. But if you're going out and you're buying some of these foam pads, which I have a ton of, they're thick. They're thick and they're plastic, and if you try to cut them down or make their profile thinner to fit within the shroud and these little brushes, they just fall apart. And I've tried flap wheels, and I've tried, I've tried it all. But now this, it's a beaut. This is a billet aluminum disc, fits on your grinder, and it's super thin. It comes with a hook and loop, so you can use all your sandpapers, whatever grit you want. Not only is it super strong and allows me to put a lot of pressure without it deflecting the plastic, but it's allowed me to be just, maybe an eighth of an inch below the surface of these brushes, which just gives you such good suction, such good dust collection. Game changer. So what are these little beauties? They look like your car remote. Basically they are, but they attach to a plug that has 3 outlets in the plug, and I can turn on my vacuums, and I can remotely turn on my HEPA filter. I can do it to multiple things, the grinder if I really wanted to. I don't need to because I have the remote here, but if you ever see me with these, you know, usually on a pocket, it's just my remote control on and off switches. So like, let's say for instance, I can turn this one on. Yeah. Or that one. Cool. But yeah, allows you to keep working, and if somebody comes to your door, which, you know, happens all the time, or if you need to stop, you can just turn everything off. Quiet. Yeah. All right, woo! Let's keep going. That wasn't so bad. And let's see, it took me about 3 hours. Let's say maybe, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, about 20 sanding discs. But it's where I want it to be. So I'm only going down about 6 inches, back to about a foot. A little bit more on the strakes. Along the side, I'm going to do some modifications here to the hard chine. But all the way up front, it's looking pretty good. All the way to the back, the sides. Yeah, not so bad. That transom that we're going to work on, I've got some unique out-of-the-box kind of ideas, and I'll share that with you tomorrow. Good morning, welcome back. I hope you're having a fun, productive start to your morning like I am. We're going to jump right in on that transom. I have some ideas. I don't want to do a standard extension of the transom where I cut back the stringers and I cut back the transom wall, because these are solid. Usually do that when everything's rotten, when the floor is rotten. But I got a good base here. It's all tied into the stringers and the floor, and the fiberglass is really good. So I don't need to do that kind of extension. I could build a pod. I could just get a bracket built, but I kind of want to save some money. Pods and brackets professionally done are a couple grand, and that's all I paid for the boat. So I want to think out of the box, and this is my idea. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of these kicker brackets. This one's pretty standard. They come powder coated. This one's just standard aluminum. But that being said, I picked up 2 of them, and they are mirror images of each other. Their dimensions are 12 inches wide. This is 8 and 6 and 19 inches long. Identical. Now, these are rated, let's just say for 150 pounds is what I've heard. I've read on forums. But I think together, if I take 2 of them and I bolt them side by side, so let's get this here. I bolt them side by side. If I get them welded, or even if I do some poor man welding and just epoxy them together and drill and some bolts to them here, they'll work as one bigger bracket, hopefully hold about 300 pounds. That in conjunction with building a box or pod around it. So let's call it a bracket in a pod, or a pod around a bracket. I'm into this 50 bucks, 75 bucks, a sheet of plywood, fiberglass and whatever. I think I could be into this for maybe 400 bucks, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than $2,000. So altogether I might be in, let's just say 500 bucks. And if it works, that's amazing. It looks like an integrated part of the boat, like it should be like that. If it doesn't work, if it flexes, if it's not beefed up enough, well, that's on me, and we will see. So it's exactly where I want it to be. I've got the extension mold, call it a male mold or a positive mold. Basically it's just, I'm going to be fiberglassing to this, tying it into the old hull, and then once I flip it all over, I'm going to take this mold out, or the plug out, and then do some more fiberglassing on the inside of it, or the inside. Now I use just melamine here. I just had it around, but I'm hoping that it helps release the mold a little bit easier. On the back here, I used some rigid foam. It allowed me to get a kind of a compound curve, which I really like. It's very close to the old transom's compound curve, which is beautiful, which means a lot of the characteristics of the old boat won't be lost. On the sides here, I've taken and I've splayed out, or increased the angle of the sides, and splayed it out, and which is now putting pressure on the old side of the hull. But once it's all fiberglassed in, it should retain that new angle. I'm not going to fiberglass right to this. I'm going to rub it down with a little bit of wax, or maybe I have some mold release. But then I'm going to put some peel ply down. Now peel ply, when you're working with unwaxed polyester resin, is awesome because it allows it to cure, because it allows the oxygen not to hit it. But it also, once you peel it off, it retains a chemical bond to some extent, or at least a lot less sanding than if you used waxed resin, which is going to be great, hopefully, because when I do flip it over, I take the plug out, and peel that peel ply off, I want to pretty much be able to start tabbing into the old transom wall, and then I want to reinforce all these corners and edges on the inside with some woven roving that I have. I have a ton of it over here. All in all, it's going to be about a 1 to 2 hour layup. I'm going to go wet on wet on wet, and I'm looking at 5 layers today. It all starts off with that peel ply, and then I'll go over all the little things you need to get ready before you start your layup. Especially in a small space like this, it's really easy to either forget something or to knock something over. So I'll go over how I set myself up, and then we'll get at it.
Now, when it comes to applying the resin onto and into the fiberglass, I like using different rollers and squeegees. And then once you have it pretty much on top of the fiberglass and then saturated into the fiberglass, you're going to want to roll out any air bubbles. So I use all sorts of different rollers, different sizes. Here's an assortment of them. I got brush rollers, I've got knobby rollers, I've got ridged rollers, I got rollers for the corner, and I got rollers for the flat surfaces. Basically, you want to roll out all the air bubbles and get that fiberglass fully saturated with resin. And when it comes to fiberglass, I started storing mine up in the rafters of my shop. I find it easier to pull down, easier to cut. Now, as you see, I like using this specific cutter. I've got a couple versions of it. It's a fabric cutter, but oh my goodness, it makes cutting this fiberglass so easy. I think it's even easier than cutting with those electric shears, the snippers, but it just cuts like butter. I like to always cut all my pieces of fiberglass ahead of time, have them all ready to go, especially for a big fiberglass layup like this. So I tape them up and then I mark them depending on the width and the size of them. Now here I've marked all my different layers. I might not use all these pieces, depends on how the saturation, but I'm going to have them all ready. I also like making sure that all my supplies are ready to go. Here's some laminating resin that I use, and I get the five gallon jugs here. Of course, my mask. I like using these gloves and any wax or grease remover. Helps prep the fiberglass, and you gotta have some good old acetone.
Peel pie is ready to go. Fiberglass is ready to go. That just leaves mixing up some resin and just starting. So Google later, you can find calculators for how much resin you're going to need based on the type of fiberglass fabric you're using. Because I'm using a combination of different ones, I had to individually figure out how much square footage or square yardage, and then put it into the old resin calculator for each individual fabric, and then add all that up together. It's going to be about 2 gallons, roughly 2.2. We'll see if that's how much it actually takes. And you don't want too much resin. You don't want your layers to be too thick of resin. And thank you for this information from Andy at Boatworks today. He's done so many great tests on doing different amounts of absorption, but roughly for everything I need, I'm gonna have to mix up 2 gallons, and I'm gonna do it in 4 batches, so half a gallon each, which is going to allow me not to kick off in between the different layers. I think I'm ready to go. Ventilation, mask,
gloves, cleanup tools. I got a tarp on the ground. Yeah, let's go for it.
So far we've got 2 layers of woven roving on the base and in the back of the transom. I'm going to start rolling out any air bubbles. So we're halfway done, and I've just started to overlap into the boat right now. The next is going to be a 1708 biaxial with chop mat, and then maybe a second one of those, I'm not too sure yet, and then finishing everything off with a nice chop mat layer.
As I'm going layer by layer, I am rolling out any air bubbles, trying to make the bond between the layer before it nice and tight and compact. Part of that is applying the right amount of resin into the fiberglass. You kind of know because it becomes translucent. But the other part is kind of wrapping it like a nice Christmas present, nice and tight. So between each layer, I'm wrapping the corners, as much for strength, but as for keeping it nice and tight, trying to keep the dimensions, within the tolerances that I've set out. And once I got that all done, it's just a matter of, rolling and rolling and squeegeeing and rolling until it's that translucent quality that you kind of get to know. That means that you're sitting pretty good.
So the next thing I have to do is come back in, take this top layer of peel ply off, and then I'm going to continue those strakes over top and the chine down to the new transom. I have some fairing to do in between, and then after all that's done, all the new strakes and the fairing, I'm going to go over it with 1 or 2 more layers of chop mat, just to make sure that those new strakes and everything are definitely watertight, waterproof. Now these composite inner strake cores are set. I let them set overnight. They're nice and strong. They're equal distant to the old ones. They have a true line from bow to stern. I left them a little long so that I can cut them back later. But now that they're set, I can mix up some more epoxy, some more filler, and skim them out to get that old straight angle here. Now that's just the first step in making them a little more fair. I'll also put a little bit of chop mat on top of that to lock that in. And when I'm doing that, I'm going to mix up enough to be able to fill any little gaps that I have, any little wows. I did a first filling when I put these in. That's why there's a little more of a discoloration between this and the very first layup. But I'm going to reactivate it with some laminating resin, which will allow this surface here to take the filler a little bit better and bond. And then I'm just going to level it out, bog it out all along here. Well, about 18 hours ago, I put this baby to bed. I put some moving blankets over top of the work that we just did, just allow it to kind of cook. Now that it's done, yeah, I'm not too sure if I actually pointed out, but after I put the peel ply down, I was still not too sure that the chop mat that I was putting over the inner straight core was not going to kind of flip up. Whenever you're trying to bend some chop mat or some fiberglass cloth over a sharp angle, it has a little bit of memory and wants to kick out. So all I did is I put a kind of a spline here. I put it on top of the peel ply so it won't stick, and I just held it in place with some tape here. And if all this goes well, if it went according to plan, then it will have held down the chop mat. And it did. It held it all down. So that's a success. I'm going to pull all these off and take the peel ply off, and we'll get a better look at how everything's cured and if that nice strake is still as fair as it was when I started the project.
Next episode, we're going to work on widening the hard chine. Then we're going to put some fairing on the extension and the rest of the hull. Why don't we throw some paint on it while we're at it? And then we can start putting our attention to the sides.
Hey, you very good. See you next time.